Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all here today. And while our panel is getting settled, I'd like to pay tribute to the fact that there are a lot of ex-students and ex-staff members here. Congratulations for turning up time after time. It's fantastic to see you, all the familiar faces, and it's a great privilege to know that you're still engaged and involved in the college and the college and alumni. It's fantastic. Foundation Day wouldn't be the same without mentioning our founder, two very important founders of Tocal, and that was the original grantee of the area, that's C.B. Alexander. Now, Charles Boyd Alexander has a fascinating history. I'm not going to repeat that history, but it's an interesting story, and the story of how he made a very complex will is told in a quite nice little book, which is available for you up the back, Who Was C.B. Alexander? And it tells his story, which I can assure you is a fascinating one. Very interesting family, very interesting heritage that he left us. The other person that must be mentioned in the context of Foundation Day is Edward Allen Hunt, who's called the father of Tocal. Such an influencing figure on the establishment of Tocal. His story has been told as well, but to give his context, I'm going to talk to Philip Cox, who is our founding architect, one of two. Ian Mackay was the other one, but certainly Philip was the initial contact for E.H. Hunt. Philip, how did that happen?
Oh, well, it happened when I was, I had just graduated from Sydney University, and I had done a very large theoretical scheme of an art gallery, and it so happened that Ted Hunt came to visit, and he looked at the drawings and he said, "They're pretty good. I've got a job for you. I've just got this benefaction from Mrs. Florence Price at Leppington, and she's left 400 acres of land for the Presbyterian Church. I'm thinking that we should move the home for naughty boys from Manly to Leppington, where they've got more space." And so Ted Hunt got me to do the first job at Emerald Hill, which accommodated children who had criminal records. And we built the first home for them at Emerald Hill at Leppington. That was in 1962, and it won the Silman Prize. So it was quite extraordinary that I was 23 years old and winning the Silman Prize was quite an event. And then Charles Boyd Alexander will came up at about the same time. And Ted said, "We're going to go for that because I think the Presbyterian Church should be involved with that great benefaction, particularly agriculture." And what's more, I came from that area. He came from Largs, and he wanted to, further the great legend that he knew of Charles Boyd Alexander and Tocal itself, even though the court case that they had to go through to acquire Tocal was contested by, I think, the Salvation Army and other benefactions. Anyway, the Presbyterian Church won it. And at that stage, we put our heads together and said, what is an agricultural college? And it was the assembly of the Presbyterian Church approved the idea of Presbyterians who are, always been interested in education, establishing an agricultural college. and that met the broad conditions of the child sport Alexander will. We virtually didn't have a brief to do this college. We went into a huddle with the social services department of the Presbyterian Church, and we mapped out something which you see here today. And that all started in 1963, and I was only 24 by that stage, and met up with Ian Mackay, and who was a few years older, who was very, very compatible in our thinking. We had a great passion for what is Australian, the Australian homestead, the wool sheds of Australia. And at that stage I was embarking on a book, Rude Timber Buildings in Australia, with Professor Freeland, which explored the early structures of rural Australia and how we thought that they were really the cathedrals of Australian architecture. We were against the trend because there were people like Robin Boyd and the Bauhaus in Europe post-war, which advocated modernism, and we thought that didn't fit what we were wanting to do, and the continuation and the furthering of an Australian architecture. And Tocal gave us the opportunity of giving that some expression. I was only thinking that had the client been the Department of Agriculture, you would never have had a Tocal. It was the Presbyterian Church who had vision and wisdom to say, go for it. We want something that's spiritual and something that's lasting and something that's memorable, you know, as a college. Because they in their education institutions, the memory of being in an institution is so important after your education, of having been there, lived in the place. What are your memories of it? Are they good? Is the environment that you've been in good? And so on. So we've got the church to really thank for that, even though they felt unable to continue on with the administration of the Agriculture College and turned it over to the state government. Nevertheless, I think we've got to thank them as a body of people, you know, for allowing Tocal to exist.
But Philip, they basically didn't give you a brief, as you mentioned.
Very
so
little.
They just said, show us what you got and we'll see if it's all right or not.
Virtually that.
So that must have been pretty daunting for you and Ian.
Well, we went around we went to Hawkesbury, we went to Yanco, we went to places around which were already established agricultural colleges, and we got a brief from them. Well,
but this is nothing like them, is it?
They wanted a dairy, they wanted a hay barn and things like that, which were put down on the other paddock. But as far as the accommodation, EA said, I want a hall, I want a chapel, I want teaching facilities, I want a dormitory, and that's virtually, and a good dining room and all the rest of it. So that's the essence of what the original Tocal here is all about. And I suppose it's really parallel with other major residential colleges throughout the world.
So the time schedule that you were given and the brief that you were given and the number of people who were looking over your shoulder in terms of the finance, in terms of the timeline, and in terms of what they wanted in a college must have been pretty intimidating.
No, it was absolutely minimal. EA ran the shop,
yep.
And his colleague, the Reverend Douglas Cole, was very, very important. He was the director of social services in the church, and he was the one that supported EA and got the ball rolling here. And he's mentioned in a lot of the films, You can see Douglas Cole in many of them, but he was the great supporter. And even though when we were building this, we had a lot of criticism from other members of churches saying, terrible brickwork, oh, gee, bad workmanship, it looks terrible and all of this. And so we had to, combat that heavy criticism because they really wanted something a little bit more suburban than we were.
No pressure then, no pressure. Philip, because of the size of the project and the timescale, you must have had to attract a large workforce to do the work.
No, it was done with about 6 people in the design team, and it took 2 years, which is absolutely fantastic timing. Yeah. Today, it would take 4 years, 5 years or more by the time we got through authorities and all the crap that goes on with trying to build. Maitland Council were very supportive, and we had we didn't go through all that nonsense that goes on today. Yeah. They were anxious to get the college up, and we did. We had a fantastic builder, Neil Gardner, who was local. Yeah. And what's important about this building, everybody was local. The adsmen were local, the carpenters and the bricklayers, the materials are local. Everything is local. And it was the first example, really, of what is called by sustainability today. This is what people preach by sustainability and circularity in our economy, of realising that locality is very, very important, and the environmental aspect. I mean, Tocal was self-sufficient, its own water supply, its own sewage systems. It was self-ventilating. I noticed air conditioning has crept into this place, which is a shame. But initially, it relied on the first principles of belonging to nature and realising that the nature could evolve into an architecture that was supportive.
Well, not only is it that, but it's almost maintenance-free. But combined with that, the creativity that went into the details is just amazing. Like these bolsters in this room here, they're incredible. Now, where'd that come from?
John Verge. And also the Blackett, and Verge had used it in other buildings, and of course the Blackett hay barn was a great inspiration to us. And you go up there, and the same bolsters are up in the hay barn at Tocal. And we felt at that stage that we should pay some recognition to the to old Tocal, particularly the Blackett barn, which is one of the greatest barns of the 19th century up there. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So, Philip, since this initial work that you did here, you've gained an international reputation, but it was this that I believe really launched your career, and it's a real credit to you and Ian and the other builders and workers here on the site that it turned out the way it did. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you very much.
If I could, yeah, that's great.